The satiating joy of a great Michael Curtiz picture is timeless, a gift for posterity. I imagine one of the easiest Curtiz pictures for modern audiences to enjoy would be 1941's The Sea Wolf, starring Edward G. Robinson, Ida Lupino, and John Garfield. Adapted from Jack London's 1904 novel of the same name, its screenplay was the work of the celebrated screenwriter-director Robert Rossen. Its function as a 90-minute lead performance-driven character study is what The Sea Wolf's contemporary accessibility is tied to. Robinson's Wolf Larsen is said to have been analogous to contemporary fascist tyrants. Its narratives intend a serious, considered attempt to understand the consciousness of a then newly identified psychological profile. So looking back on The Sea Wolf now, it shines as a strong attempt to illustrate the complexities of leadership and power. While evidently aided by London's lauded imagination in the first place, it is very easy to imagine a more throwaway B adaptation of this story which reduced Wolf Larsen to a nasty scene-chewing brute, not representative of anything except comic book villain Bwahaha. Be grateful that Hollywood chose upon Rossen and Curtiz to realise this narrative. Although I praise its screenplay and I consider it the anchor which waits for a 21st century attention span, my favourite facet of the film is its cinematography, courtesy of Sol Polito, a Michael Curtiz regular over several films: The Adventures of Robin Hood, Angels with Dirty Faces, Elizabeth and Essex, Dodge City, The Sea Hawk, Santa Fe Trail, Captains of the Clouds, and This Is the Army. The Sea Wolf presents some of Polito's most impressive black and white photography, vaguely expressionistic, but sufficiently realistic, despite being photographed on a soundstage. Its sophisticated understanding of generating space is worth noting in particular. At times this feels as though it could have been filmed at sea. Utilizing sheens of salty smoke and its expansive boat set, The Sea Wolf depicts an unstable anthropogenic ecosystem. Its natural environment parallels its player's stormy malaise. There is a notable lack of symmetry in the photographing of its set. No angle feels necessarily intuitive or predictable. There is a mild, jagged tilting to several shots and unglamorous low-angle framing of its intimidating, yet broken, pathological subjects. Consider the cinematographic philosophy, or lack of, present in a Lou Landis production about ships at war, very contemporaneous in the early 1940s. They are straight, blocky, and like a demonstration of its vessel's space. Curtiz and Polito, in trying to realise this particularly literary vision, however, are determined to have The Sea Wolf be as functionally involving as possible within its cinematic context. So more so than charismatic performances, and Robinson and Lupino in particular are spectacular, and I would also heap praise upon Gene Lockhart as Dr. Prescott, The Sea Wolf relies upon a filmic realisation of its set rather than merely existing, shooting the set itself. Large bodies of water fall upon the set, soaking a durable cast of players. Even Robinson is blasted by large currents of water as the ship begins to sink. Classic irresponsibility equals realism Michael Curtiz. The cast ought to be grateful this was not the late 1920s when Curtiz's artistic sadism was at its absolute worst. These juicy, compact Curtiz pictures are some of the best, most endurably entertaining old Hollywood films ever released, and The Sea Wolf is one of the finest examples. I implore anyone any age to seek out 1941's The Sea Wolf. You might find it an extremely enjoyable experience. It is also interesting to consider where The Sea Wolf fits amongst the Curtiz catalogue. By the title and its era of release, one might initially assume that The Sea Wolf is amongst these classic Errol Flynn swashbucklers, say Captain Blood. This was, after all, the year after the release of The Sea Hawk, a Flynn Curtiz classic. With The Sea Wolf, instead, we have the dark side of the Captain. Instead of a politely euphoric spectacle, The Sea Wolf is a brazenly serious visual novel. Here, its spectacle originates within the patriarchal pathos of Wolf Larsen rather than the virtuous resistance of an Errol Flynn vessel. Also, if the Sea Hawk is to be considered a valiant promotion of British mendacity against Nazi Germany, the Sea Wolf might be considered an attempt to psychoanalyze and reduce the essence of the enemy, to distinguish the Hitlers and the Mussolinis from the Roosevelts and the Churchills, although to nevertheless humanize them as historical figures, much like had been done to the Neros and the Napoleons. I love that not only do we have this early 20th century post-psychoanalysis dark side of the swashbuckler, but it also retains a similar affect to those cherished from those initial swashbucklers: thrilling entertainment, grandiose spectacle, and directorial dynamism. And interesting to consider The Sea Wolf as one of these darker films, retrospectively classified as noir, emerging in the 1940s as the cynicism of the World War II era begins to seep into American films, your Maltese Falcons, your Citizen Kanes, your Casablancas, a shadow that truly permeated the rest of the 40s, and only through certain sanitization and considered protections, was the wool able to be restored briefly over the 1950s? Thank you, Technicolor. But yeah, sometimes a life at sea is not emblematic of freedom and exploration, but of isolation and imprisonment. But don't take my word for it. Do explore Michael Curtiz' 1941 classic, The Sea Wolf.